Recording now. Welcome to Bone Robot Games podcast. It's been a minute, but we're back. I'm here with Isaac.
Hello.
There he is. And we're talking about difficulty in video games today. I actually, one time I remembered I wrote an article on this. I was so mad because people are like, Dark Souls should have an easy mode. And I wrote up a big article and I was like, I'm not gonna post this. Like, people are gonna be so fucking mad at me. It's like such a big point of contention nowadays. People are like, games should be accessible to everyone, and I was like, no, they should not. That would be like saying jigsaw puzzles should have an easy mode. What the fuck is the point of it then?
Yeah, we've talked about this. People like to bring up accessibility. Accessibility is for, deaf people to be able to play games. If you have some kind of disability, if you're colorblind, then your game needs accessibility options. And there are a lot of games that do that and do it well. And it's very good when they do that well. Accessibility doesn't mean your infant can beat the game. That's not what it means. The game should be a challenge in order for it to be fun. If it's not challenging, it's not fun.
It's always funny to me, too, because they never say, oh, you guys, you know what? I think tackle football should have more accessibility. You should make it easier so that I could play it. It should be non-contact, and you should make it so that they can't hit me until I catch the ball, and the ball should be bigger and softer so I can catch it easier. They never say that because they don't care about sports, because they care about the game that they're playing that's super popular right now, but they can't play because they're not good enough to beat it.
Yeah, they bring this up for every Dark Souls game. They brought it up for every FromSoft game, because they brought it up for Sekiro. They're like, oh, Sekiro should have an easy mode. I saw articles that said From Software needs to start respecting players' time. Like, no, you don't care about players' time. You care about your time because you're a gaming journalist and you suck at video games. And so you're like, I need to review this and I can't beat it in 12 hours, so it needs to have an easy mode so I can get my review out.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you just suck. No one wants to hear your fucking opinion.
Exactly.
Anyway.
I find it very strange, too. Like, I'm very good at video games, and so games that are, like, really easy and I, like, steamroll, I'm like, this game kind of sucked. Like, it was like that Prince of Persia game I just beat. What was it called? The Twin Crowns? The Two Crowns? The Lost Crown? There we go. I started it on the hardest difficulty, and it was, like, pretty fun to do it that way. If I had played on anything lower, I would have thought it was a dog shit game. So it's, like, interesting that...
I've also played it on the highest difficulty.
Yeah.
And it was fun, but...
It still wasn't even that challenging. It made it so that it was like, it was challenging enough to be enjoyable, but it had no replayability. If it was any easier than that, I can't imagine playing it on normal. It would be a fucking breeze. There wouldn't even be challenge.
It would be no challenge at all.
So I find it interesting, like, if someone were to play the game and they played it at normal and they're like, oh yeah, it's pretty difficult on normal, and then I played on normal and I, like, didn't even die once, I'd be like, yeah, you need to be put in an insane asylum and you shouldn't be allowed to talk about video games anymore.
Yeah, the highest difficulty for that game should definitely be the base difficulty.
Yeah.
Not the only difficulty. I'm against difficulty settings.
Yeah, I agree.
As a concept.
Difficulty settings say
beat the game.
Why do easy modes exist? What's the point of putting it in? Especially because they very clearly only implement them where they go, normal or hard mode is like, normal mode's how they want you to play it, and then hard mode they just up everyone's HP, and easy mode they just lower it. And it's like, okay, well, what's the fucking point? What experience are you trying to cultivate here, right?
Yeah, they're just trying to make it more, like, arbitrarily easier or more difficult. I like when games are like, this is the way it's meant to be played, and it's like, okay, I'll play that mode. Most of the time I'll say, all right, let's play the way they want me to experience it. And the hard mode is usually not anything significant. Like you said, it's just higher health for enemies, lower health for you, or you take more damage.
Yeah.
And sometimes games will have, like, better AI or something in hard. It's very rare, but a few times I've seen where they actually make significant changes for the harder modes. And it's like, well, if you're going to do that, like, you're taking away from the experience for everyone that plays on normal. Or
exactly.
Like, you're not playing the same game at all at that point. But that's very rare. Most of the time it's just garbage.
Well, yeah,
it's
it's also...
more health.
Yeah, it's completely an afterthought. They're not like, oh, you know what, let's rebalance this, let's change the weapon statistics. That'd be so much fucking work. It'd be like creating a second game. So instead of making one full, intended, balanced playthrough, they make, like, one that's whatever, and then they say, oh, hard is, they do more damage to you and you have less health, and easy is the opposite.
Yeah, and anyone that plays anything on easy should put down their controller.
I agree. My main like complaint about difficulty is people know that like doing things on a harder difficulty requires more skill. And people like only don't say it when it's like acceptable, right? If you were to be like, oh yeah, I beat through the Fire and Flames on Guitar Hero, you'd be like, oh shit, dude, let me see, that's probably so sick. They'd be like, oh, I meant on easy. I can't actually beat it, right? They wouldn't say that because they know that like it's impressive only if you can beat it on expert. No one's ever like, oh, I can beat it, no problem, and then put it on easy. Everyone would like laugh at them. They know that it's like embarrassing, and the only reason it's more fun is because it's more difficult. It's like inherently built into the system. So it's like the same thing with like, but you never know. Like I'll talk to people sometimes. I've had this happen where I've been like, they'd be like, oh yeah, I beat this game, and I'm like, oh cool, and then I found out later that they beat it on easy, and I was like, oh, we've played completely different games. Like you did not beat the same game I did.
It's a completely different experience.
Yeah.
On easy, it's not a challenge. It's literally easy. They call it easy.
Yeah.
And so, that's a problem I have a little bit with. I know speedrunning is a different animal entirely than regular gaming because it's an entirely different skill set. But I can't watch a speedrun if they put it on easy most of the time.
Yeah.
It's like, especially if it's like a hard game and then they just put it on easy mode. And I was like, oh, I wanted to see like what the optimal strategy was to beat this boss, but they don't need to do anything. They just
tank the hits because he doesn't do enough to kill them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tragedy because then it's like that's why I ran Metroid Dread a few times. It's like 2 or 3 times, and I checked the other day. I still have like the 66th best time, but that's because I ran on hard, and most people play on normal or easy.
Interesting. That's so funny.
Yeah, but it's been years. I think it's been an entire year since I put that run up, and it's like over 2 hours. It's not a good run. It's just like one of my first runs.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I'm 66th place. I was like, I guess I'll stop. Still, no one's really surpassed me. I'm still the same place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so weird. I mean, that's obviously very different, but I do think, like, what's the point, right? If it's so easy that you can breeze through the game with no challenge, then, like, you're basically just watching a movie at that point. So if the story is not insanely good, which it isn't, then what's the point? What sort of gaming experience are you getting out of this? And I don't really think that exists. And now here's where we start to run into problems where, like, Elden Ring is coming out with a DLC, obviously, in, like, a week or something. And I have no desire to play it, honestly, because the more time passes with Elden Ring, the less I feel inclined to play it because it is, by a long shot, the easiest, quote unquote, Souls game that has come out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I did play it twice. I played it once with my normal strategy, which was easy. I do what I do in every Souls game, which is I get a very heavy two-handed weapon and I like pancake enemies, but they added a jump in this one, so I could just jump and two-hand overhead attack people, and it would stagger every boss in the game. It was always very strange to me because that was like, it's a very, melee-based thing. I have a rusty anchor, which I got like 2 dungeons into the game, and I used it the entire way through. And when I got to Millennia, who's supposed to be this big bad thing that everyone struggled with, I remember like I beat her on my playthrough, and I legit think it took me 2 tries, and I just beat the piss out of her, and then everyone's like, yeah, I have such a hard time with her. And I'd be like, oh, okay, that's weird. I staggered her on repeat with my jump attack, and she didn't have a chance to do anything. It felt like I was playing a different game. And so I was like, are these people just like, are the people that are saying that they're having a hard time with it just very vocal and also very bad? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, usually that's the answer. I think the Elden Ring, they screwed up with that jump button. You'd think adding a jump button to Dark Souls formula wouldn't severely alter the game, but it really did. Because you can just close the gap and hit with your strongest attack all at once. So you don't need to space anymore. You don't need to pay attention to the enemy even. You just jump in and hit them with your R2, and then they're stunned.
Yeah.
And then you could jump away right after if you need to.
Yeah.
The only cool thing I saw is there's that guy Ongball on YouTube that gets like hit list runs on every Souls game, and I saw him playing Elden Ring in a clip today, and there was a boss that had like a ground-based AoE, and he just jumped in place over it, and I was like, see, that's what they added the jump for.
Yeah, but then they don't balance for the other 100 bosses in the game, so it's just like, oh yeah, you have a jump, it's cool when it works the way it's intended, but most of the time it's like it just beat the piss out of 90% of the enemies with a giant weapon and a thing. And again, so now the point becomes Elden Ring was so easy after a point. Like, I did struggle because it was my first playthrough and I was like learning the game, but by the end of my very first one, like, I could beat everything with ease, which isn't the case usually. Like, I usually just like squeak out a win the first time I've ever played a Souls game. Like, and it was very tough. Like, the first time I fought the Soul of Cinder in Dark Souls 3, I fought him for like an hour. He beat the fucking shit out of me. It was very difficult.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's a great boss.
Yeah, it's one of the best bosses in gaming. And then, obviously, Gwyn is also a really good boss in Dark Souls 1, and he just has, like, a big fucking sword, and you just have to be good at the game. And that's something that I've always admired about Dark Souls games is even at the end of the game, like, normally bosses, like, with RPGs and shit, you're just, like, super overpowered. So by the time you get to bosses, the end bosses, it's more of, like, a fulfilling story beat that you're fighting the big bad, finally everything culminates here, but it's not usually like that hard because you have a million abilities and a ton of health and ammo and armor and all this fucking shit. But in Dark Souls games, it's like, oh yeah, they still just fucking crush your health and you have to be good at the game. You still just have to be talented to beat these people. And then Elden Ring, it was kind of just like, no, you have a ton of movement, you have a ton of abilities and magic and things they put in too much stuff, and it's like just so painfully easy that it was not an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of stuff where, like, I don't use magic in Dark Souls generally, but in Elden Ring, they added so much magic that I've seen videos where people can one-shot, like, every boss in the game.
Mm-hmm.
They just cast, like, 15 buffs on themselves, and then they cast this crazy strong spell, and it literally will one-shot every boss. I'm like, holy fuck. So, like, they intentionally, like, made the game easier. I think because they probably heard these scumbags complaining over and over again, oh, the game's too hard, the game's too hard, and so they dumbed it down. They definitely did.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, something that I always complain about, I remember getting into arguments with people online where they'd say, oh, dude, I love open world games, which is their other big mistake. I was like, yeah, sure. You balance your open world by giving yourself a horse that can run past 90% of the stuff. When I'm playing the game, like, unless the game is like so fun that I want to fight every possible fight, or there's a benefit to me doing it, there isn't after a certain point. And that point becomes apparent very quickly. So there's like a bridge, it's called like the Bridge of Sacrifice or something, like very early on to get to like a castle in the lower part of the world map. But you could just go on your horse and run past and jump over literally every enemy there. So it's like, what was this set piece designed for when it's completely skippable in every single way? And if the exact same thing was in Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3 without a jump button or without a horse who has a jump button as well, a double jump, and without all these traversal tools and overpowered magic, which you probably wouldn't have at that point in the game either, you just have to fight your way through it. Even like very early games, something that I miss about Dark Souls 1 that it got worse as the game went on, like when you're in the Undead Burg and stuff, sometimes you're fighting enemies in a corridor that is the width of your shoulders, I mean.
Yeah,
and so it's like
you need to choose your weapon carefully.
Yes,
you got like a long arc, it's gonna bounce off the wall, which is one of like the most important things. Like, that was something I remember people praising the game for, just that your weapon can bounce off the wall, and so you have to choose your attacks carefully. People were like, oh, we've never seen this before in a game. This really makes you consider your attacks instead of just pressing a button. And
you actually had different attacks, like your R1 and your R2 would do different things. So like if I had a big greatsword and my R2, which I've been using to beat everyone in big swaths with, is like a big left to right horizontal swing, I just can't use it there. And then I go to use my R1 and it's like a dinky little stab, and I was like, oh, this is shitty in most places, but it works perfectly here when I need it, when I'm fighting a guy who has a rapier. So that's such an interesting thing. It's like you put you in these small corridors where you have to fight this enemy. I can't run past them, I can't cheese them, and I can't just like spam attacks and hope for the best, which is like the final scenario you can do in a lot. Like when you get strong enough in Dark Souls 1, you can kind of do that in some areas. But there it's like, I have to beat this guy. Even just some knight, you're like, if I fuck up here, he will kill me. And there's ways to come around it. You can use a sword and shield, or you can just tank him with healing and stuff like that. But then you go up against 3 more people in the next room. So it's like you have to be able to do this in the gauntlet from one bonfire to the next. They also removed that in Elden Ring, where there's just like a bonfire outside every boss room, so there's no runbacks ever.
And if there's no bonfire, and it's like, even if it's a mini boss, then you've got the Stake of Marika, so you never have to run back to anything.
Yeah, there's that challenge was completely eliminated, where you don't have to do a run back. So like, part of the Dark Souls thing was not only do you have to beat this boss, but especially, I brought this up the other day to you, like the run back to Gravelord Nito is diabolical. You have to go through part of the Tomb of the Undead Giants or whatever, where it's completely pitch black and there's giant skeleton dogs that are jumping on your head. And then you walk through the a single file side of the mountain pathway where skeleton totems pop out of the ground, and behind them are skeleton archers shooting you. And then you get through that room, and you're in a room with a bunch of pinwheels that shoot magic at you. And then you have to break down a door and purposely fall into a pit that guaranteed drops your health to start the boss fight.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
It was because it made that fight, like, just getting back to the boss was an accomplishment that you were like, all right, I'm back. And then you took a breath, and you're like, all right, now I have to fight this incredibly hard boss who spawns a bunch of fucking skeletons, and he was insane.
And he can hit you from anywhere on the map.
Yeah, with his, like...
The scream thing? Yeah.
What the fuck it's called. But yeah, he could hit you from everywhere. There was a bunch of skeletons, so if you weren't aggressive, you were fighting skeletons and getting hit by his crazy attack, and it was hard.
Yeah,
just getting back to him was
and it wasn't,
hard.
But he didn't have to have he had 3 attacks. He had one where he screamed and the scythe comes out of the ground. He has the AOE magic blast, and then he had a sword swipe if you were close to him, and that was it. That's all he needed because he was summoning skeletons. You had the long run back, and you could learn those things quickly, and then you adapt. And after a couple tries, you beat it, and you overcome a challenge, and it feels really good. And then in Elden Ring, it's the challenge is now they have to make the bosses extremely damaging because there's a bonfire outside of everyone. So everyone struggled with Margit in this game, and it's you struggled with him because they made him insanely powerful and fast because there's just a bonfire outside the room. So you just walk in and die to him 50 times. You just pound your head against the wall until you beat him, which is another form of not a challenge, right? It's you didn't really... you overcame him by, it was a war of attrition. When the opportunity, because with Nito, specifically, it's you would, get overwhelmed, fuck, I have to make the run back. Maybe I'll, go and buff, or I'll find a way to do this, or how can I get through here easier? And then, but also, you just memorize the patterns of the enemies on the way there. You memorize, oh, I can do this to get through quicker, I can do this. And sometimes that doesn't work, and you get hit on the way back, and you're like, God damn it. But then you clutch up in the fight, and you're like, fuck, I had a bad run back, and I still outplayed him and I won. There's so many dynamic ways to experience the game and have a good time and overcome different challenges in different and dynamic ways. And then they distilled the experience into spawn a bonfire right outside the boss room, walk in and fight him 50 times until you inevitably beat him, rinse and repeat for 100 bosses.
Yeah. And I always think about that Bridge of Sacrifice that you mentioned, because I always think if I didn't have a horse, that would have been so fun.
Yes.
It would have been so fun to try to make it through that crazy bridge. There's a ballista there. There's a lot of enemies. A lot of them have crossbows. And the enemies in Elden Ring, if they have crossbows, they also have a sword. So once you get close, they pull out their melee weapon, and now you have to fight them. It's not like in Dark Souls 1, it's oh, it's a bow enemy. I can just run up and smack him. It's well, this guy's going to pull out his sword and shield.
Yeah.
It might fuck you up.
Yeah.
So I always think that would have been so much fun if I couldn't just run past it.
Yeah.
But since I could, I'm going to every time, because eventually it goes from being the challenge becomes fun when you overcome it and you're like, all right, I did it. But before that, you're like, oh man, I got to run back through this bullshit again. There's so many fucking enemies. This is crazy. So it's not enjoyable until you have to overcome it. But if you don't make me have to overcome it, I never find that enjoyment. I just get past it. And it's crazy how easy it is to just get past that whole bridge that they clearly wanted you to experience in some way. But you just don't have to. You don't have to at all. You can just jump right over it.
Why even have the set piece of a bridge where it's oh, you have to go straight down this bridge and fight a bunch of enemies and a ballista and this and this and that? Why even create that set piece when you could just skip it entirely? It's I'm not going to force myself into a gameplay loop when you don't make me. I'm doing the gameplay, right? Part of the gameplay is I can ride a horse and I can double jump. So if I can do that, why would I force myself into a fight when death is extremely... they take away your souls and they reset your position. It doesn't feel good to die, and I'm chancing death. And what am I chancing it for? Nothing. I can literally run past this, go to the next bonfire, be safe, and be closer to my new destination.
You'd also get so few souls from fighting enemies on the map in Elden Ring, or runes, or whatever the fuck they called it.
Yeah.
But you get so little experience points that it's it was never worth it to me to fight an enemy if I didn't have to, because there's no reward. I'm not gonna get enough points to level up or anything. And so why would I even bother? I'm just get past everything that I can.
Something that I thought was very funny to me too is something that Dark Souls 1 gets a lot of flack for is that the last third of the game is pretty unpolished, and a lot of the stuff you could tell in the beginning, it's like Undead Burg and the Catacombs, and these are like these very tight, intricate maps that are cyclical, and they have shortcuts, and they're very rewarding and fun to go through, and they're devastating, and they're hard, and they're massive, and it takes you a while to learn where they are, and all these cool things. And you get to like Lost Easily, then it's like a gigantic open lava pit with 10 of the same enemy dropped into it, and they're like, okay, this is like really boring and uninspired, and it kind of like the game is still good, but that's like one of its biggest flaws. People are like, yeah, Lost Easily sucks, and Bed of Chaos sucks, and like that part, like these are like the worst part of the game where it's like, well, the end, they kind of phoned it in here. But that happens in Elden Ring as well, and they just like get a pass for it. There is a section of the game where you like go up a gigantic staircase and you enter into like the yellow area. I can't remember what it's called. You like go up a gigantic staircase, you go through a giant double door, there's like a tree with a golden seed, and then like a big empty plateau vista off to the right, and if you go left, you go up 2 more giant sets of steps where a giant like undead bird demon attacks you, and then if you go farther, like a vision of Margit attacks you at the top of that. Now, the weird thing is, there's 2, at the top of the first set of stairs, there's 2 tree sentinels. You could run by them on your horse and go through the door. They're literally not guarding it. The door is open. You could go through it. Once you get through, the demon bird attacks you, you can run by it with your horse. And then you can also run by Margit with your horse. And
I ran past all those enemies.
So did I. And the worst part, if you come through and you do stop at the tree, I remember I stopped at the tree and I wanted to see what was at the end of like the plateau on the right instead of going up the steps. And it was just 30 seconds straight of driving my horse, holding forward with no encounters or enemies or anything. And then you just get to another bonfire that's like in a church or something like that, and then that's it. And there might have been a couple enemies when you get there, but I was like, so like Lost Easily and all these places get flack because it's like a big empty boring area, but this area like is, they're like, oh, it looks so cool and it's so well designed. I was like, it's 2 staircases that you can ride past 2 mini bosses on. What the fuck is the point of this area? It's nothing. This entire area could be removed and no one would be like, oh, they took my fucking favorite part out of the game. It's completely forgettable segment where you can run past swaths of enemies with no discretion.
I felt that way about the Mountaintop of the Giants. I got there and I was like,
yeah,
oh, this place is just giant empty snow area instead of giant empty lava area. I never thought to compare it to Lost Easily, but you're absolutely right. Like, it's just a giant empty area. The thing that I think speaks to people about Lost Easily sucking is that the fucking lava glows bright orange and it's fucking fucky on your eyes and it just looks like shit also.
Yeah.
Where like at least these areas in Elden Ring, they paid an artist to make something.
Yeah.
But it's still not gameplay.
No.
Like it's not interesting, it's not challenging. Nothing in the game is challenging except for some of the bosses because you can just run past everything.
Yeah. And a single player game, like keeping your attention after like I'll fight everything in the beginning because it's new and I want to explore. But when I get 80 hours into the game and I'm like, oh my god, I just got to fucking Mountaintop of the Giants or whatever, I was like, I don't want to explore anymore. I'm ready to be done with this fucking game. Can I have a complete experience and end it? And you still have like 3 bosses left by that point. So I'm like, I just ride my horse to the next bonfire, And again, in Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, they don't tell you where the next one is. You just have to hope that you find it. And in this one, it's like, oh, how about a big glowing gold pathway that guides you away from one and to the other? I was like, what is this, fucking Bioshock 1? Might as well just put an arrow above my head. Horrible game design decision. And people are like, oh, it's so cool, it's guiding, it's not over. I don't need a fucking guide. If you want me to explore your cool, gigantic world that you made, just let me fucking explore it. But then the problem obviously arises like, oh, what if they miss this grace, this site of grace or whatever? It's like, oh, just put a giant glowing line to it so they don't. Because it's too big. Yeah, it's a problem that they invented with their own open world bullshit.
Yeah, that's 100% the problem of open world. It's like, oh, now I have to make sure the player finds the stuff that I want them to find. And it's like, well, if you didn't put all this extra empty space around all the stuff you want me to find, I'd be able to find it. But they just don't do that. They just like, oh, let's just make a big open world because that's what everyone likes. And people praise this fucking game for being a big open world as if that has any value. There's no value in a big open world.
No.
It's a big empty world.
And you know what's crazy about Dark Souls is there's like hidden off the beaten path stuff that like I've never found. I just did like my 6th playthrough of it ever, and I just found that Lake of Ash for the first time ever when I did it. I had never found it before. And
whole areas that they're like, oh, if you don't find this, well, fuck you.
Yes, it's completely extraneous. You do not have to do it whatsoever. I literally never Googled it, and because why would I? How would I know about a place that I've never seen? How would I know it exists? I'm not gonna like look up secret areas. Dark Souls 1 because I'm not a fucking clown. And then in Dark Souls 3, I found that place that's like the demon fire temple or whatever the fuck it's called. And it's like I'd also never been there before, and I was like, oh shit, this is a completely new area that I've never been, and I've played Dark Souls 3 like 3 or 4 times. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, you get rewarded with a really cool, intricate area with unique enemies and unique bosses and a bunch of different set pieces for finding a new area, and it's completely additional and does not have to do with the intro game. And I was like, that's fun. It feels like a blast to find that. There's a million things in Elden Ring where it's like, yeah, I could explore this, like, dungeon, but why would I? It's not fun. I'm gonna get the reward is gonna be a weapon type that I don't use because I got fucking fucked in my ass because they don't make builds for strength only people. There's 1,000,001 dex weapons that are cool, and there's like legit 5 good strength weapons that are strength only. It might be less than that. It's like embarrassing how few they put in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. The thing about the Lake of Ash in Dark Souls 1, there was a chest at the back of some, like, you're inside some tree, and there's like a chest. And behind the chest, there's a wall. That wall is an illusory wall. You hit it and it goes down. And behind that's another chest. You get that chest. Behind that chest is another illusory wall. So they, like, almost didn't want you to find this. They wanted you to feel like, oh, fuck, there's another illusory wall. And then you go in this giant area.
Yeah.
That's, like, precarious. There's basilisks and shit that could curse you, and getting cursed sucks dick in that game. I think it never happened to me, though. It might happen to me once in my first playthrough.
Me too.
But, like, it's, like, extremely precarious. You have to, like, jump down, you have to, like, platform down these crazy little vines and shit like that. And there's a giant fucking Hydra at the end.
Yeah.
And you never need to go there. And it's amazing. Dark Souls 1 had a giant world. So did Dark Souls 3, so did Dark Souls 2. But it wasn't a giant open world. The problem is the open. The open translates to empty.
Yes. Because, like, again, you can't balance it. You lose all that aspect of balance. I've said this where, like, something I hated about it was, since you can't direct a person where to go, you say, the world is your oyster, enjoy it however you want. I got, like, super overpowered, and then, like, I came back to the earlier level and I'm exploring, and I didn't mean to do this. I was just walking around, and I come back and I'm exploring, and I kill an enemy. Like, I kill a boss I kill a guy on a bridge, and it's like a big, like, golden pumpkin head guy who, like, headbutts the ground to fight you, and I, like, fight him on a bridge for the first time, and I was like, whoa, that guy was tough as hell, what the fuck? And then I fight, like, a bunch more enemies, and I get strong, and I come back, and I go through, like, an earlier dungeon. I didn't realize it was an earlier dungeon, and the boss at the end of it is that guy, and I was like, okay, so now I'm being punished for exploring, because the boss is not as difficult as a random guy I fought out on the street that had other mobs around him. I just have to fight him one-on-one in a room now, and I've already beaten one of this guy. So it's like, I'm being punished in this open world. So there's, like, again, there's awesome things that can happen, but then shit like that can happen, and it happened more often than not, where I was like, oh, I'm too overpowered for this, and also I've already seen this enemy in the game.
Yeah, they had a lot of those little mini dungeons, the catacombs or whatever, where it's just like the final boss of it is not a boss; it's just an enemy. And
then you kill him, and you get, like, a summon, and it's like just some soldier, and I'm like, oh, cool, a worse summon than what I already have. Like, what the fuck is the point of exploring? It's not staggered in a proper way where you're like, oh, I get something a little bit better, then a little bit better, then a little bit better. I found literally the weapon that I used for the entire, like, next 80 hours of my run, and then I never had to switch weapons. I was like, this fucking sucks. What's the point of having 1,000,000 weapons in the game if I can't use any of them because the one I found earliest in the game is better than all of them?
Yeah. Yeah, the Rusty Anchor is definitely
powerful. So, like, looking back at all these caveats, I was like, well, I did have an inkling. I was like, I want to play more. The Dark Souls games do this to me. Again, like I've said, I've done like 6 playthroughs of Dark Souls 1. I've done 2 or 3 of 2, all the way through to completion. 3 or 4 of Dark Souls 3. And so, like, I had an inkling. I was like, I want to go back and do Elden Ring. But I decided that I already, after 1, I was like, I need a challenge because the original game is not hard enough, and I don't want to just I don't have it in me to just have another basic playthrough because it wasn't fun on its own. It wasn't challenging enough on its own. So I said I'm going to do a bow only run. And I contest that I am the only person who's ever done a true bow only run. I have seen people do it online. I did not use summons, and I did not use I didn't use like in-game summons. I didn't use ash summons or whatever the fuck they're called. I don't even remember. I used a bow and I used specialty arrows, and that was it. I didn't use buffs. I don't even know what any of the buffs are in the game. I've never used them. I hate shit like that. So like you'll see a thing. I've seen a guy where like he's doing a great bow only challenge, and then before every boss he just casts 30 magic spells on himself, and then he hits the guy with one arrow and he dies. And I was like, okay, again, you've made it so arbitrary that this could be any weapon. Like it doesn't matter. If you're using a million buffs, then what is the point of using this weapon? Anything will do it. It's probably easier with the bow because you can hit them from afar, right? You just like planned out the perfect way to kill this guy in one shot and then did it, which has no merit to me whatsoever, right? What's the point? There's no challenge. And the fun thing about the bow only run was some things in the game became very easy, where like some segments I was like, oh my god, like this was a fucking nightmare for me, melee, and when I do it with a bow, I could literally just snipe all the people before they get to me. And then there are some areas where I was like, I don't even know if this is possible because I have to fight a guy in a very tiny room and I only have a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that was I watched you play that on stream. That was it was insane, especially the end of the game. It took you like a couple of days to beat the final boss, and it was extremely crazy. That shit looked actually difficult. Way more difficult than any other experience on Elden Ring. And I concur, I haven't seen anyone else do it. They all use buffs or something. The only thing that you did was, besides bows, use crossbows, but it still counts. They're bows.
I actually only got the crossbow at Radagon because I needed to, and I'll explain why. I didn't research if it was viable to do a bow only run. I just said I'm gonna do it, and I was killing everything with a bow. And interesting enough too is like bow. You could tell as you go on that bows were not designed to be a mainline weapon because they get like one Ash of War, and they all have every large bow has an Ash of War that's like it's like measured strike or something, and you just like take a longer draw on the bow and you do more damage, and short bows just shoot faster when you use your Ash of War, and that's it. And that's all they can get. And I think the Ash of, or that's what they start with. Every single one has those. And then the short bow, I can't remember. I don't even know if it gets a specialty Ash of War, but longbows can get rain of arrows where you shoot one arrow into the sky and like 10 arrows fall down, which is very good for conserving arrows. So at the beginning of the game, the biggest challenge was I had to spend all of my runes, instead of leveling up, on buying arrows because I was going to run out. And then eventually, once you get the cookbook or whatever, I would spend a ton of time killing beasts because I had to harvest beast bones to make my own arrows. And it was like this balancing act of, like 2 bones comes out to 10 arrows. So if I have 10 regular arrows left, I can use all of them to kill enemies and get animal bones to make 50 arrows. And then I use those 50 arrows to kill 20 animals, and then I make 100 things. So once you get to that level, then you can only have 99 of one stack of an arrow in your inventory at a time. So you could have 99 regular arrows and 99 fire arrows or whatever. You could have 2 like different arrow types. But then you can only still have, I think, 699 in storage. So the most arrows you could have at a time was about 800 of one type. So there was this balancing act where I go, if I run out of arrows, my run is over. If I run out of arrows and runes at the same time. And in the beginning, it's very possible. There's a lot of time spent like, I can kill this guy, but I have to kill him and not use the arrow, or I have to use the runes to buy arrows because I don't want to run out. And then that means I can't level up, so I'm not as strong. And that was like really fun and dynamic. And I was like exploring these tiny hallways and using a bow, and it takes a long time to draw it and figuring out how to kill this boss and that boss. And I beat Commander Nile, and I beat all these bosses. And the only time it really changed was when I got to Malekith. He's insanely fast. Yeah. And the only way to actually beat him, this is when I found out that short bows have a thing that lets you shoot faster. So I switched to a short bow, and I actually think I found a longbow that had the short bow. I think it's the only longbow in the game that has the short bow one that shoot faster. And what I had to do still was, you can't, like, by the time you get to Malekith, I think actually by the time you get to Fire Giant, all the enemies have so much health that a full stack of regular arrows will not kill them. And if you don't have the arrow of their weakness, you also will not be able to do enough actual damage to kill them. So you have to start from Fire Giant on, all the required bosses, you have to start applying like debuffs to them or statistics to them. So Fire Giant, I was actually able to use Poison, and I had to proc it like 4 times. And on Malekith, I had to proc Rot twice. And now here's another caveat. Now when you get here, you realize that Rot arrows are the only way to get Rot arrows in the game is to use Aeonian Butterflies, which are finite. So I found this out when I'm playing it, that Aeonian Butterflies that spawn on the map, there's, I don't know, 30 of them maybe total in the entire game. They're finite. You pick up Aeonian Butterfly, you use it to make arrows, and that like you get 10 arrows per one butterfly, and then it's gone forever. The only other way to get an Aeonian Butterfly is to go to the Lake of Rot and farm them from basilisks in the lake who have an 8% drop chance. So the rest of the game, once I got to Malekith, was I actually think I was able to beat him with Aeonian Butterfly arrows from it, and I beat him with that. And then I had to do the twins, the what are they? The Godskin duo, and then I had that's the next mandatory one. And after the Godskin duo, I have to do. Oh wait, no, that's before Malekith, isn't it? Yeah, I did them. So it's Malekith, and then what do you do after Malekith? Is it just Radagon? Oh no, it's Godfrey, and then Radagon, Elden Beast. And so by the time I got to Radagon, I had to proc Rot twice to kill him because he has so much fucking HP, and he has like no weaknesses. I don't think you could bleed him or the Elden Beast, so I can't do it on any of them. And Radagon, at this point, it becomes all the enemies become too fast that if I do the rain of arrows, you shoot an arrow into the sky, they move and dodge every arrow just by simply walking. Radagon's walking speed would dodge the entire rain of arrows. A completely poorly implemented ability that does not work on bosses. Bows are not viable for this.
Let's also mention that Radagon just had the passive ability to block arrows.
Oh yes, I forgot. By the time I got to Radagon, he would just, if you just shot arrows at him, like if he's not in the middle of an animation, he will just knock them out of the sky, like several in a row. Like he will just bat them away. So I was like, wow, I really fucking bit off more than I could chew. So I was actually watching another person's stream, and they were using the pulley crossbow, which one trigger pull shoots 3 arrows. It's cool because you go tick, tick, tick super fast. The downside is it uses 3 arrows. So at this point in the game, what I was doing was I had a discovery set where I think like one of the abilities makes your like item discovery higher. So I put that on, and it would literally take me 2 hours of farming Aeonian Butterflies off of basilisks to get enough to make like 400 or 500 Rot arrows, which was like enough to do like 3 hours of attempts on Radagon. And then since you can only carry 2 stacks of arrows, I had to have a third bow of a different type, like a great bow or something, to use when I got to Elden Beast, because I had to fight Elden Beast and Radagon with only 200 arrows, and Radagon would take like 50 or 60 by himself. And so it was like this huge challenge where I had to switch. I had to play perfectly. I actually tested, and I took... It was more viable to use it with no armor so I could dodge better. And I had to beat him by like... I had to proc Rot twice, and I had to like dodge everything perfectly, and I could only attack him at certain times or otherwise he would swipe him away. And then after I beat Radagon, I had to beat Elden Beast. But I did it. I finally did it. It was actually a very challenging run. It made the game super fun. But after a regular playthrough of Elden Ring and that insane bow-only challenge that no one else has ever done, I'm the first and only to do it on record, I have no desire to ever play the game again. I do not want to play a DLC.
Yeah, you kind of experienced both extremes of it. You played it on you basically turned on easy mode because you had the rusty anchor. You didn't know. You just wanted a rusty anchor. It's a dope ass weapon.
Yeah.
And it turns out every boss dies to the rusty anchor instantaneously, more or less. And then you went on the other extreme and you were like, let me do it in a way that the developers actually clearly do not want me to be. The final boss, the penultimate boss, can block arrows just passively, and I'm gonna beat him with only arrows, and he still did it.
Yeah,
that's really the both extremes of it. You played Elden Ring in the easiest way possible, not on purpose. Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
And in the hardest way that anyone's ever played it. And so, why would you play it again? You've done everything.
Yeah, I really cannot make a harder challenge for myself. And here's the thing about Elden Ring challenges. The challenges for it got popular, and they're all, like, actually not that hard and very arbitrary. Every time I watch any person doing, like, a level 0 run, they just are using a katana, and, like, it does, like, half the boss's health somehow still when they use a weapon art that's, like, the unsheath or whatever it is. So I'm like, yeah, again, you're, like, this isn't a real challenge because you're not overcoming anything. Sure, you have the base stats so you can't get hit, but it makes it no different than any hitless run if you die in one hit, right? Because you're at level 0. So the difference is who can have the highest build, the best build at level 0. Well, you didn't come up with this build on your own the way I did. No, I had no help on a bow build. They just go, oh, what's this extremely super high damaging level 0 weapon? This. Okay, I'll beat the boss with that. So it's like, where's the real challenge, right? There isn't really any. It's you're spawning right before the boss the same way everyone else is. You run in and try it a million times until you beat it. And so I mean, like, a deathless run is more challenging, but any like level 0 runs I don't really have much respect for because it's like, again, it's a war of attrition. You just put as much time into it until you can beat it, and you're not overcoming like your strategy. I remember like watching someone doing a level 0 run and they were using fist weapons that could bleed, and all the enemies I struggled with in the beginning, when I would hit them with a fucking arrow and it would do 60 damage, I was like, this guy just pounds R1 10 times and he attacks so fast that it automatically procs bleed and it does half the boss's health in one hit. And I was like, your fight is a dream come true compared to mine. I also couldn't get hit by fucking Radagon, but he would knock my arrow away when I would shoot him. I was like, you could just like pound on him and like there's weapons in the game. Like there's like a sword that just has rot on it. So like you could just attack someone and proc rot, which is the most devastating status effect in the game. And the only way I had to do it was a complete fucking nightmare. I didn't know it was going to be that way. It just kind of got hoisted on me by the end of the game because I had no other way to beat it. And so like those runs are like, yeah, they're challenging kind of, but like again, when you use a guide. And because these people are not developing these strategies on their own, right? They're not going, oh, I'm going to do a level 0, and oh, I found out this weapon is good enough. They definitely go on. They say, oh, this weapon is, I've seen someone else do it with the katana. I know it's viable. I'll use the Uchi katana, which a class starts with or whatever. Or you might have to find it, but super early to find early on. You know, it auto-procs poison on hit. Oh, that's another thing. I actually got a bow at one point that didn't work. I got a bow that was supposed to natively cast poison, and it didn't.
Oh, right. I remember that.
I finally looked up. I was like, I need some help. I looked up a bow that had poison on it, like natively. You shot. It was supposed to like proc poison just by shooting them, and it did not work. I never once got poison on anyone. I was like, okay, this bow doesn't work. It does not work the way it's intended. So again, like the difficulty that they impose themselves is very arbitrary. And again, it's the same thing that I talk about. It's the Mario Maker effect, where we've had long discussions about this, where it comes from Kaizo's, actually. Super Mario World, right, or whatever, is very challenging because it's dynamic. When you walk into a thing and it's 3 levels of, it's a ground level and then a level above it and a level above it, and they're floating blocks, and on each of those, on the top one is just a turtle, and on the middle one is a hammer guy. It's like, okay, a million things could happen here. You know, the hammer guy can jump up and down. I can get lucky and run right through. I can jump over them. I can hit them from below and attack them. I can figure it out, but it's dynamic and it's interesting. And then, like, Kaizo's came out, and it's like, oh, the only way to get through this segment is to do 2 frame-perfect shell jumps, which are not, like, a real thing in the game, where you, like, bounce the shell off the wall and then jump off it. It's, like, an advanced tactic that you never have to use in any actual Mario game ever. And then you land on a Yoshi off that, and you do a Yoshi jump where you throw him into the ground to grab another shell midair, and you jump off of a P block that you crush and also jump off of at the same frame, which is like some weird thing. But the thing about all those are like they're done exactly the same way. So you're not like impressive and you're not displaying skill. Again, it's just like everyone who beats it the identical way. There's not a single room for error. It's whoever has the tenacity to pound their head against the wall until they finally complete it, which I don't think is skillful in any real way.
Yeah, it's like it's choreographed.
Yes.
It's like, can you press these buttons within these windows? And it's like, oh, it's frame perfect or whatever. It's like, yeah, that's hard, but You've got unlimited time. There's no dynamics to it. You don't have to think. It's
Yes.
just I have to do this and then this and then this and then this and then the level's over. And that's the whole thing.
Yes.
There are sometimes speedruns are like that. I watched a video last night about the world record run for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And it's similar in some ways and very very much not that way in other ways, where you can buffer inputs and get a perfect stun on this guy every single time. But then other fights, it's you have to pay attention. If he spins 3 times, you have to do this strategy. But if he spins 4 times, you have to do this entirely different strategy. So you have to be on your feet. And in this world record run, the guy, it's actually the Summoning Salt guy, has the world record.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because there was a part where he'd never gotten the specific pattern before ever, so he had to have a spreadsheet up to look, oh, this is the strategy you do, and then he screwed it up because he'd never done it before.
Yeah.
So that it can be interesting. I think it is. There's a level of a type of skill involved in doing a choreographed.
Yeah, obviously they're not
inputs.
They're not skill-less. It's the modicum of skill. It's honestly akin to Guitar Hero, right? Where it's you press the exact same key combinations. You know when they're coming. If you can press them in this order fast enough the exact way that you're supposed to, you win. And there is a challenge to overcoming that and getting better at pressing those exact keys right when you have to. But I do think that it is not as interesting or as incredible or inspiring as a run where someone reacts to a lot of things on the fly and overcomes those things.
Yeah, being adaptable is a lot more valuable to me.
Yeah.
As well.
And so my plan for Radagon was I have to dodge. I have to learn when to dodge this ability, and again, mine was still different from other people because again, you have these crazy openings where if he would miss a hammer strike, you would be roll behind him, and you could, if you have any melee weapon, you get 5 hits off on him right there. Yeah. And I'm so close, and every bow takes so long to shoot that I get 2 shots off, and if I try and do a third one, I guaranteed get hit on the next attack. And so it was
or he blocks it.
Yes, or he slaps it away. So there was very finite windows for me to work within that thing, but no one else, there was no precursor, right? It wasn't a trend that I jumped on. No one was telling me how to do it. I figured this all out on as I did it. Oh, okay, I can't do that because he will hit it. And I was figuring out in real time and then adjusting to it and eventually overcoming it. But games that have self-imposed challenges, again, I honestly think it's a bad sign where it's if I have to put my own challenge on this, it's because I either A, really love the game and I want to keep playing it, but the base game is not enough anymore, or B, there's not enough challenge, so I have to add my own, which is just not a great sign in the first place. Every single Dark Souls 1 run I've done has just been a different fun build. It's not been, the last one was kind of a challenge run, but not really. I've done sword and board, I've done magic, I've done axe, I've done two-handed heavy weapon, and this one I just got a pretty decent sword, and then I went and got infected with a parasitic egg monster on my head, and then I just left it there because I thought it looked cool. And there's a crazy thing in Dark Souls 1 where if you gain 100,000 souls while you have it on your head, it actually upgrades to a usable attack where instead of the kick, you stick your head out and the egg pukes and a little worm comes out of it and bites them. It does no damage. It's very little damage. It's worse than the kick, and it's extremely hard to do. And there's no benefit to it. And the entire time you have your egg on your head, from unleveled up to leveled up, you gain half of the souls that you do normally.
Don't you continue to gain half of the souls after you?
Yes.
After it upgrades?
You always gain half the souls, and I left it on my head for the entire game. I got that after I killed Quelaag, and I had it on for the entirety of the game because I thought it was funny. But it was my 6th playthrough, so it was it wasn't really a challenge. First of all, once you do these challenge runs, you learn so much about the game. You don't really need all those souls. I don't need.
Yeah.
You could go. They could have taken 50% of the souls away. If your 6th playthrough, you can deal with it. It's fine. You understand how the game works. And that's sort of. Oh, go ahead. But, no, you got it.
Well, I was gonna say it's something beautiful about Dark Souls, the first one in particular, because when you learn how to play the game, you're never gonna experience that again. I would love to, if I could go back in time and play Dark Souls 1 the first time again. I would love to do that.
Oh yeah.
But you never can because you've legitimately like leveled up as a player.
Yes.
Where now, like enemies that used to kill you, you might never die to them again because now you know how to beat them, and unless you're intentional, unless you're like, oh, I'm not allowed to roll in this run or some kind of crazy challenge,
Yeah.
or I can only use a bow or something crazy, then you're never gonna be challenged again.
Yes.
Like, you've just learned it. It's in your bones now. Like,
yes.
You're just now good at Dark Souls. And
yes.
Something that other games just aren't capable of doing. We had a conversation the other day where I was like, I don't think there were any hard games before Dark Souls.
There weren't.
Games knew how to be difficult before Dark Souls came out and showed them how.
And
because every other game is some arbitrary thing. It's like, oh, you have limited continues. So
yeah.
if you die too many times, you just have to start over from the beginning of the game. Even Mario 1 on the arcade, it's like, oh, well, once you're out of continues, that's the end.
Yeah.
And so it's either that or bosses aren't difficult, they just have a lot of health, or they're a puzzle, like in God of War. Bosses are like, oh, move this thing.
Yeah, go here and rip his heart out. Yeah.
Or it's just like, oh, you just don't do. Sometimes it's like arbitrary things where it's like, oh, until you get this weapon, you can't damage the boss. Like, all these older games has had like simple shit where it was like arbitrary difficulty, and then Dark Souls came out and showed games how to be difficult and fun, and teach the player through gameplay. There's almost no dialogue in Dark Souls of value,
and
so there's no help hints, or there's no helpful tips. I mean to say, where it's like, oh, in order to do this, in order to parry an enemy, you press the button at this time. They never fucking tell you that.
No.
They just tell you what the parry button is, and then you have to figure it out.
They're like, have fun with that, bud.
Yeah.
You got it. But you're exactly what you're saying. It's such a unique experience that until Souls games came out, like now it's ingrained in people, and people have like, you know, Souls gamers have leveled up as gamers like across all games, because the first time everybody played Dark Souls 1, the reason why it stands out as the best among all of them still was because even in the simple areas, you were not accustomed to this before. Unless someone's playing Dark Souls 3 before Dark Souls 1, by the time you get to 3, if you've played 1 and 2, you're like, oh, I know what to do. These areas aren't hard because it's similar to Dark Souls 1 and 2. But when Dark Souls 1 came out, there was nothing like it. It was truly unique. And when you come into the area, even the one that immediately sticks out to me that took me a long time in the very beginning is the way through the Undead Burg is a fucking like nightmare. You get to the bridge with the fucking dragon, and you're like, oh, I just have to run across this and hope he doesn't kill me with his fire. And then you like go across and die. There's no way for you to know that there's going to be like safety and a downstairs, because you can't see it. You see a giant bridge. He's just shooting arrows on, or he's just shooting fire onto it. So you go in, you inevitably die. Yeah.
Any other game where you see something like that, it's like, oh, there's a giant dragon with fire blocking my path. You're like, oh, this isn't the right way to go.
Yes.
They want me to come back here later. But that's not true in Dark Souls 1.
And then after you,
so many conventions.
And then after you like walk around for a little bit, you're like, there's literally nowhere else for me to go except for down this. So I guess I have to. And then you walk down and you die and you go, did I do something wrong? And then you make your way back there, and you're like, there really was no other way from the bonfire to go anywhere but here. And you go here, and then you're like, maybe I'll just try and time it better. And maybe you die again, and then maybe on the third time you find out that there's the steps there, and you go, oh shit, this is the way to go. That's so fucking cool. And then you get through that little area with the rats underneath that bridge. You come up. You walk out the door, there's a giant boar with armor on, 2 guys on the ledge above him shooting arrows at you, and 2 guys with spears right next to you. That area took me 1,000 years to get through. And now, I get through it without blinking a fucking eye.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever died to the fucking dragon since my first playthrough.
Exactly. Like, that entire area from the dragons all the way into like the undead guys behind the boar. You've learned this area, but you've also learned how Dark Souls works. You know, I probably shouldn't take this fight right now. I can get souls later on. I don't need souls. I don't have to fight every enemy in the game as soon as I see them. I can get past this if I just kill these 2 guys. The boar can't chase me up here. Then I can take out the archers one by one. If I drop down and run in here, he doesn't kill me. I don't have to fight him. But if you're stubborn and the first time through you're like, I guess I do. If you kill him, he's one of the few monsters that just don't respawn. So you just get rewarded by killing a very tough enemy earlier than you're, I don't know, quote unquote supposed to. But stuff like that is like the way that you get through the level and the way that you traverse it is so interconnected and tight and unique and interesting. And then the way that you get through that, like that's never been done before. And and again, until people experience that, like, you don't, if someone plays, I've seen someone say that they played Dark Souls 1 for the first time and they like navigated that perfectly, and I was like, this may be your first playthrough, but you've like watched this happen. This is not instinctual. This is something that was taught to gamers. Like, again, when the first games came out, when Mario came out, people are like, don't know about deaths and like even very simple things that are now ingrained in gaming culture, having lives and having continues and things like that in the arcade fashion. And the idea of like how to play a Dark Souls didn't come around until 2009 or whatever when Dark Souls comes out. So now, by the time Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Bloodborne, Elden Ring comes out, by the time Elden Ring comes out, it's like, okay, you guys need something more because this just feels like Dark Souls but easier.
Yeah, it's kind of lost its luster because, like you were saying, it's such a great point with when you play Dark Souls 3 and you've already played Dark Souls 1 and 2, it's not hard.
No.
Like, it's still good. I love Dark Souls 3, but
yeah,
it's a completely different experience because you already know how the game works. When I played Dark Souls 1, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I remember I had a long sword, and that was my weapon. I was using that for a little bit. I didn't know about upgrading weapons. I had no idea that was a fucking thing. And so I killed an enemy, I killed a skeleton, and I dropped a scimitar. And my first thought was like, oh, I got the scimitar later in the game than I got the longsword. The scimitar must be better. So I took the scimitar, and it did less damage, and I was very confused. And I had no idea what the fuck was going on. And then it wasn't until I tried to beat Dark Souls 1 like 3 times. I bought it twice before I beat it, because I got it on PC, and I had never beaten on an Xbox. I kept getting to the Tomb of the Giants and getting stuck, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. But then I got it on PC, and I started using mods just to change the appearance of items. And I made my character look like Link, because I got some stuff that gave him like the green tunic, and I got a sword that looked like the Master Sword, and it was the Cursed Sword of Artorias. And then I upgraded it because I only wanted to use that sword because it was the Master Sword. And that's when I realized, oh, upgrading weapons is how you beat the game. This is how you actually do damage.
Yeah.
I had no clue because no other game had done that to my knowledge. It just wasn't a thing. So all of my assumptions about how games work was just wrong.
Yeah.
Everything I thought was just wrong, and Dark Souls had to teach me how to actually be a gamer.
And they also have these intricate systems where like weapons scale with multiple things like stats and other things, and there's like upgrade paths you could take where you use like the raw gem or whatever and change the basic features of them. But like it's such a strange thing, like you said, where it's like, oh, a new weapon, which is, you like in a Final Fantasy, is just always going to be better. You never find a new weapon later in the game that's worse, unless it has some fucking psychotic caveat. But 99% of the time, it's just a better weapon and you want to use it. And so, like, that's completely new, and that's something that you had to find out just by playing it a lot. And I remember you telling me several times. I still have a very vivid memory of you telling me when you use Artorias Crest and you get into the thing. I remember you telling me that you were like farming enemies there because you didn't know what to do and you wanted to get stronger. And then obviously you find out in Dark Souls games that like, oh, farming enemies doesn't really get you that much, and it's not really valuable in any way, and it wastes your time and it's tedious, and the extra souls you get are not worth it because you're going to get 10 times as many souls for beating the next boss, and you're going to get like one upgrade by this point anyway because you're 50 levels in, and it's not really worth it, and you kind of just have to like get good because the level upgrade system is already plateaued to the point where you're not really getting valuable upgrades to this anyway, and you just have to get better. So, like, that's also an interesting system, but you only find it out by playing the game. And I'm not going to touch on this any more than this, but obviously the crazy multiplayer help system where you could just see people's messages on the ground that kind of tell you what to do, but they can also just fuck with you, which is a psychotic thing to add into the game as well. It's like, but none of those messages are like, upgrade here. It'll just be like a message in front of Andre that just says, like, try jumping, and like, thanks a lot, dickhead. What the fuck? And so, like, again, a million unique systems that people take for granted by virtue of seeing people play Dark Souls, having it take over the entire gaming zeitgeist. I mean, it's been a gaming revolution since Dark Souls. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. They've changed gaming. They changed my life when I played it. It's like, you told me that happened to the game, and then I got Dark Souls, and I say this all the time, it's the Dark Souls experience. Like, there's very few games that do this to me. I remember getting to Sen's Fortress for the first time and like dying, getting so fucking mad at this bullshit game that I stand up and turn off my Xbox. I put my controller down on the floor, I sat on my couch and stared at the black screen of my TV for 5 minutes straight, and then I turned my Xbox back on and said, I can do this, and I started playing again. And
it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful.
It's a fucking masterpiece. And like, and so like no one like does that anymore. And I'm gonna segue quick into a different thing. But like, so beating Elden Ring and having it be less difficult and having to impose the self difficulty on myself makes me think of like how you look at difficulty in games when you have to impose your own difficulty. And I realized, like, again, the beginning of the game was like far harder. So the Radagon stuff was sort of like the stuff that I don't like, where it's like I'm being like caught up, like shoestrung by not having Aeonian butterflies, which are the only thing in the game that are not like purchasable. It's completely arbitrary that I had to farm them. It's like the only thing you could do. Again, especially like it's imbalanced. There's just like a weapon in the game that will proc rot automatically for you if you have a sword, but you just can't do it on a bow. You have to make the arrows, which is why. What's the purpose? It's not as good. It's much harder to proc because you have to hit them with 10 arrows before they get it anyway, which is very difficult to do. So it's very clearly not thought out. But so at the end, it was like arbitrary by virtue of all that stuff. Still challenging, still fun. But the more fun part was like right in the beginning of the game, when the difficulty lies in balancing spending runes on arrows versus spending runes on levels up, killing enough like creatures, which is a thing that you never have to do in the base game whatsoever. Why would I ever kill a creature when all you use their bones for is to make arrows? So getting their arrows was like getting their bones was like finally had use in the game, which never had use before. I just never killed these creatures that are like the only thing that they have to do in the game is kill them, right? It's a completely
the whole crafting system was a complete waste.
Yes,
like
unless you put a self-imposed thing on.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was completely tacked on and unneeded. And so when I finally had to use it, I was like, this is really cool and dynamic. And it makes you realize that like games in general are just balanced poorly. Again, this doesn't apply to Dark Souls games because they're really good at it. But like when I did a challenge run of Final Fantasy VII, I don't have an exact number. I've been in love with Final Fantasy VII since the day it came out. I probably had 20 playthroughs on the game within like 5 years of it being out. We would just play it on repeat at my buddy's house, and I've got to have 36 playthroughs of the game lifetime, maybe more. And I do it like once a year now, less than I used to. And so this year I was like, I'm like officially tapped out on Final Fantasy VII, I think forever, because I've done runs like every year, I've beaten it tons of times, and I beat it like 2 years ago, and I like did like a max character build where I did the glitches to get like stat upgrades, and you could like use a morph trick to get stat upgrades that you wouldn't normally be able to get using a morph and W item. And so I got like my stat, like my strength, my speed, my luck, and like one other stat, like maxed out on the stat screen with 3 characters, and just blew out the game. I was unstoppable. And after that, I thought I was done. And then last year, I tried the No Materia run. And something that was really cool for me was the No Materia run was obviously you can only use weapons and items. And I didn't want to like abuse it. Again, there's like a lot of people that do runs like this that are extremely arbitrary, and I want to have that dynamic feel to it where it's like there's a lot open to you. I didn't use a guide. I just started playing. And the unfortunate thing about it was the hardest part was the very beginning of the game. Once you get out of Midgar and you could just like farm gil if you need extra gil from enemies, or farm levels if you need, the challenge is effectively gone, right? Anyone at that point in the game could do a No Materia run if you get out of Midgar, because you could just fight. You could kind of still do it inside Midgar if you're like willing enough. Again, what's the point? If the idea of doing a No Materia run, the idea is to have a challenge. If I'm going to just farm 20 free levels at the slums and like just be strong enough to overpower and take a bunch of hits, what's the fucking point of doing it? So I didn't like excessively level at all. At the end of the game, I did farm a couple items to make it easier, but you didn't really need it. So the hardest part is at the end of Midgar. When you get captured in Midgar and you get put in jail in Shinra Tower, the end of that section is you go to the top of the tower. Sephiroth has killed people, and you have to fight Rufus solo as Cloud, and then you switch to another team that has to fight the machine on the elevator, and then you immediately go into the chase sequence, and you have to fight the machine at the end of the highway to escape. And that was the hardest part of the run by far, because you have a very limited stock of items and stuff you can get, and when you're fighting the boss on the fucking elevator, he's long range. The only person that could hit him was Barret. So I could throw items at him and hit him with Barret, and it was like, damn, they did not utilize this in this game whatsoever. This is the only point where this is a factor, and it's only because I'm not using materia. I was like, this feels like a completely wasted thing. So after that point, it essentially became super easy. Also, this is why like I really don't trust people who make guides and who like min-max because they're dog shit at it. So I didn't look at any guides, but like I think a lot of people say, like people would come into the stream when I was streaming it and say, oh, the best way to do this is to use these characters. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I want to use Barret because I think he's cool. And I know enough about the game that I can that I figure stuff out. And it's something that I really, really hate, and something that people, even people who min-max and are like, quote unquote good at doing stuff like that, they do like the Super Smash Brothers Melee like 20XX effect, and they say, oh, on paper, if you do everything perfectly, this is the best character, right? They have the highest potential for greatness, but that's not feasible. Nobody does that, right? Nobody is perfect. And nobody plays everything perfectly. And everyone makes a lot of errors. Everyone. No one is like a good enough gamer for that to be feasible anyway. So when you look at these things, they're like, technically, having Sid or whatever on your team is the best possible option because he can do this, this, and this or whatever, right? And I was like, yeah, sure, but that's not gonna like come out. And a lot of people tell me, people tell me all the time that Omni Slash is better than Barret's Catastrophe, and it's actually not. The only time Omni Slash is better is if both characters are completely maxed out. If you're doing max damage per hit, Omni Slashes is better because it does more hits. But until you're both doing that, which takes a lot, the average player will never do 9999 with a single physical attack in Final Fantasy VII ever. Like, there's no need to get that high. It's like something you have to do on your own. So there's really no scenario where Omni Slash is better than Catastrophe. And at that point, both of them are doing like over 1 million damage and killing 99.9% of the entire cast instantly anyway, so it doesn't really fucking matter in any real way. So for all intents and purposes, Catastrophe is better than Omni Slash, right? And I know this because I ran the numbers and I figured it out, and I was like, that's very easy to see. And it's very easy to extrapolate backwards and say, yes, Omni Slash has the potential to do 20,000 more damage. But when you're at the point that you're both doing over 1 million with it, there's no enemy that has like even what is Emerald has like 1.5 million HP, so it doesn't even fucking matter. And and Ruby's a gimmick, so you can't do it with just like regular means anyway. So there's nothing in the game that requires you to have that. So technically it's better for 99% of any playthrough. Catastrophe is going to be better in every real meaningful way. So I was like, everyone's like, yeah, get Omni Slash. I was like, no, there's no fucking reason for me to have Omni Slash. Catastrophe's far easier to get, and the time invested to get Omni Slash would be fucking stupid and psychotic, especially on a no materia run. It's cooler and it's fun, but it's not better in any way. So I ran Barret, I ran Cloud, because I think you have to have Cloud. I ended up running Vincent because I realized that the most efficient way, actually, my 20XX of the game is when you use Ultimate as Vincent, you don't have to. All I'm doing is attacking, right? And all he's doing is attacking. Limit breaks are allowed, obviously. All he's doing is attacking during his limit break. So it's just a person with a high health boost, a high stat boost, and I don't have to control him. So it's basically just an auto attacker every round that does a ton of damage. And by the time I got his level 4 upgrade, it was doing like more physical damage faster than, and he had a multi-hit one too, which is just perfect. He was doing more physical damage faster than I could do with any other person. Like Barret, I think, was doing like, 2,000 or 3,000 damage a hit. And at the end, Vincent in his ultimate was doing like 4,000 to 5,000. And he was doing it immediately. As soon as his bar went up, he triggers an attack, triggers an attack, triggers an attack. And it never goes away. It lasts for the rest of the fight. So it was perfect. I had the perfect build. Barret with the highest damage attack I could possibly have with a single limit break. Vincent with auto attack that can hit multiple enemies. And Cloud was basically just dropping potions on people's head at the end of the game. But
I beat Final Fantasy VII No Materia like 15 years ago or something, and it was very fun. I did use a guide though. I went on GameFAQs and someone had made a guide, so I did everything they said, and they said you should use the characters with the highest like physical attack stats. It was Cloud, Sid, and Red 13. And Red 13 was also useful because his limit breaks would like give you haste and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I used them. And it was like you use one of Red 13's multi-hit limit breaks and high wind for Sid, and then just spam Omni Slash with Cloud. And getting Omni Slash was actually super easy because you have to go into the battle arena, and it has those conditions that you have to choose.
Oh yeah, it would break conditions that you don't have. I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, it would just break materia. You just choose the break materia.
I forgot.
Super easy to get it, but it was fun. I didn't find it challenging. I beat the game. I was at like level 70 when I beat the game, and I just Omni Slashed everything, and everything died.
Yeah,
and it wasn't even that hard. It took a little while. I had to spend a little bit of time farming for X potions. But
yeah, you can actually farm Mega Elixirs just by killing an enemy on, or was it X potions? I think that you're right. There's an enemy in Wutai that drops either X potions.
It was X potions.
Yeah, it was X potions.
I only knew where to farm them because of the guide that I read and stuff like that. But it was pretty simple. Like you just the game. Final Fantasy VII is really easy. So it's a Final Fantasy game. They're all easy. Which just a quick aside. I also beat Final Fantasy 15 at level 1 because they'd give you an accessory. I think that was like part of the DLC or something like that just lets you not acquire any experience. So you can just stay at level 1 really easily. I beat the whole game. It was easier than Final Fantasy 15 leveling up. I swear to God.
Yeah.
I don't even understand how that's possible, but I was killing bosses way faster than I had the 2 or 3 times that I've played Final Fantasy 15 regularly in the past. And that game is also extremely easy. Not only did I do level 1, I had to do no items, because in that game, if you die in battle, Noctis, the main character, will like get on one knee, and the camera will zoom in on him real far, and it gives you ample time, like probably 30 seconds at least, to press the button to pause the game and choose a Phoenix Down and revive yourself. And if you don't do that in time, the game will pop up a little message that says, "Hey, you should use a Phoenix Down to revive yourself." And then you have to close that message out. So if that happened to me, I would just let myself die, because it's insane. Phoenix Downs, they didn't even cost any money really. They were super cheap. Like other Final Fantasies, they cost like 1,000 gil, and that's like 5 times a potion.
Time. Yeah,
they're 5 times a high potion. Even high potions are usually 200. So like they were not expensive. You have a million items. I didn't use items. I ended up using magic, which I didn't usually use in other Final Fantasy 15 runs. Magic is weird in that game. I won't even get into it. But the game was pretty easy. The only part that was hard, there was a boss near the end of the game that could one-shot me. But the game also has, if you hold down the X button, you're just like holding down the dodge button, and it drains your MP a little bit, but you just automatically dodge all attacks while you have that button held down. Some attacks hit you anyway, which I never really understood. They don't explain how the game works very well in that game. But it's very easy. It's just I would get one shot sometimes. One time that boss took like 3 or 4 tries, and a couple times it would kill my entire party in one hit. But then I just didn't get hit. And it's not that hard to not get hit.
A quick aside to your side, I was just like laughing in my own head because you were like, yeah, Phoenix Down is 1,000. I was like, yeah, potions 50 and high potions 200. And I was like, why do we fucking know this? I have innate knowledge of the prices of, and like you could probably check Final Fantasy 4 through 9. It'll probably all be the same for all of those. It's very funny. Yeah. For sure. But so we bring all that up with like the Final Fantasy 7 No Materia challenge. Like this game actually isn't hard. The Final Fantasy 15 level 1 challenge, like the game actually isn't that hard. The Elden Ring, like people are doing challenge runs out of their fucking ass. So you're like, I think that Dark Souls revolutionized the way that we accept challenge in video games when it came out in 2009, to the point where you've never really experienced a difficult game that existed before that. And I think that like as gamers, we're ready for the next step, because it's gotten to the point where people are doing challenge runs. Oh, level 0 run, this run, that run. And like challenge runs are becoming popular to the point where you almost can't go through certain games without seeing only that being done on Twitch. And with the rise of speedrunning, people have become good. Dark Souls has made people get very good at video games. So games that don't have that difficulty, you blow out, and it has to have other things that make it fun, like much better gameplay loop that make it more fun, besides just the raw difficulty of a well-balanced Dark Souls game like 1, 2, and 3. Or like you need something else that's become self-imposed. And they're fun to do, but at the end of the day, I'm saying like I want more of this game with a harder challenge, and I want that challenge to be fun and engaging. So I think that it's this prime time for a developer, it could be FromSoft or it could be someone else, to step up and make the next best thing after Dark Souls. I think that we're ready for another evolution, another step in that direction.
Oh, I think revolution is the absolute perfect word for it, because there's nothing like Dark Souls before Dark Souls except Demon Souls, but that game fucking is like also arbitrarily difficult. I saw just another quick aside. I saw that guy Video Game Donkey on YouTube. He played Demon Souls, I guess the remake, and he couldn't beat this one boss, so he's like, all right, I'm cheating, and then he like used some hack to give himself like a bajillion souls, and he like leveled up his stats like crazy high, and then he was fighting this boss, and the boss had an attack that stole his fucking stats. So he's like, it was so funny because he's like, oh, the game cheated back.
That's so great.
This game is crazy. That game is insane. I do have a friend, I was telling you about him earlier, my buddy Miguel. Actually, I don't think he's beaten Dark Souls. He might have beat Dark Souls 1, but he beat Demon Souls, and I was like very proud of him because I'm like, that game is fucking hard.
Yeah.
I haven't played it. I always wanted to play it, but it's only on goddamn PS5.
Yeah.
So, fuck. But Dark Souls is the most influential game, I think, ever. It changed everything.
I agree. It's that damn good.
I'm looking for the next step as well.
Like, I think so. I think we're at the point. Like, a trilogy of them was incredible. They were all great. They got worse as they went just by virtue of, like, how revolutionary Dark Souls 1 was. You can't keep... Again, if the first game you play in the series is Dark Souls 1, it's mind-blowing. It is literally and figuratively game-changing. And then by the time you get to 3, you're like, okay, this is, like, the next logical step, but also, like, I know how to play these games now, and I need another thing. So I do think if you're coming out with this, like, I don't even know, action fighter, I don't even know what category to put it in. I mean, it's Souls-likes now. They've created a new genre of video games that are based on them. No other game has come close to it. I actually am so mad at every Souls-like that comes out. I don't even want them to be called Souls-like because they pale in comparison. They are such a shadow of a game that Dark Souls is. They shouldn't even be considered in the same thing. They're not like Lies of P, Lords of the Fallen. Nothing compares in the smallest scale. They're standing on the shoulders of giants, and they're taking a fucking shit on their head while they're doing it. It's pissing me off.
Yeah, fuck all those games. They're all fucking terrible. Code Vein, Lords of the Fallen, they're all trash.
I just played the new Lords of the Fallen, which, by the way, is a remake of a game that came out 5 years before with the exact same name, but they completely changed everything about it. So, and it's just another bad Dark Souls. This is what I hate about them, too. Okay, well, Sekiro is kind of like the next step, actually. We haven't talked about Sekiro, really.
I love Sekiro.
Sekiro is kind of like the next step in I mean, I don't think it's as revolutionary as Dark Souls, but it definitely is a game-changing and one-of-a-kind unique experience that no other game... People haven't even tried to emulate Sekiro yet because it's that good.
Yeah, I've only seen a couple of, like, really, like, basic things, and, like, I saw one thing that was, like... It was, like, these animal people fighting with swords,
baby.
And it was just straight
Talk
up,
to me.
like, Sekiro. It was just, like, they took the exact Sekiro formula and copy-pasted every single aspect on it, but it was, like, a really short game.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's even free. I saw, like, a YouTube video about it. Like, it's, like...
Yeah.
It only had, like, 5 fights in it, but it was very simple.
So
and
I played...
Everything from Sekiro was in it.
I was playing Lords of the Fallen, and in the beginning, it's, like, very Dark Souls-esque, and they're like, here's an Estus flask, here's this thing, here's that thing. I'm like, okay, they're just copying it out, right? Then you get to the first boss in the tutorial, and he has a fucking posture gauge, and it tells you to start parrying to break it. And I was like, what? You have the Dark Souls thing, but you're also doing Sekiro stuff? I was like, they're completely different games. They cannot be combined. You cannot do this to the game. And it just suffers for it, dude. It's fucking dog shit. I literally beat the tutorial boss. I fell into a pit afterwards, and the game glitched, and it gave me the classic Dark Souls, like, death camera, but I was still controlling my character, and I was in a pit, and I couldn't say anything, and I was like, yeah, I'm 10 minutes into the game. Time to uninstall. This game fucking sucks dick. And so... Like, Sekiro, I think, is a step in the right direction. I mean, it's been 5 years since Sekiro came out, and there's nothing like it on the market right now.
Yeah, nothing compares.
And
the closest thing I've seen is this game called Stellar Blade, which I think is a Korean game, but it's only
That's
on
also
PlayStation,
PlayStation exclusive, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm never going to be able to play it because...
Why would you?
When I wanted a PlayStation 5, I couldn't fucking get one. So
yeah.
Now I just don't want one
And what would you even play it for? The new God of War game? Oh
Yeah,
man.
all I would want is like Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I only want because they poisoned my brain.
Yeah.
And like they just have a few exclusives that shouldn't even exist.
Yeah.
Where's the FTC when you need them?
What the fuck is the point of an exclusive anymore? It's like I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I desperately want to play Bloodborne and like one other PlayStation, like Demon Souls. I'm like, I'm not buying a fucking $400 PS5 to play 2 games.
Yeah, Bloodborne was the other one I was trying to think of,
Yeah.
but I couldn't even remember. I did play Bloodborne a little bit, and it was pretty good, but
Let's just put it on fucking
no,
PC.
like
God
system
damn
for
it.
'em.
It's like 10
Yeah,
years
what the
old.
fuck?
You know what I always see people complain about? They're like, Bloodborne's 30 FPS. I was like, you need to be taken out into a field and have all of your fucking hair ripped off. This is insane. If you complain about 30 FPS, dude, like, Dark Souls 1 is so janky. That's what I mean. Like, Lords of the Fallen was so badly trying to have, like, high-end graphics and, like, all this graphical fidelity and shading. I was like, I still go back and play Dark Souls 1, which is a 16-year-old game, and it's like, it looks like shit, kind of, and it, like, is really, like, there's some areas that, like, it looks like shit in the way that, like, it's not polished the way, like, The Last of Us is, and it's very clearly better as a game for it. It's something that people got away from, too. Another thing that Dark Souls upholds more than anything is it's a video game at the end of the day, and they make it very fun to press the fucking buttons. There's no cutscene you can't skip. There's very few cutscenes in the game. You don't really have to talk to any of the NPCs. You can kill all of them if you want. There's nothing you have to do. It's mostly gameplay. They drop you into the game. You just start playing immediately. They don't tell you what to do, really, and then you just sort of kill stuff until you figure out how to kill stuff better.
Yeah.
And it's like just prioritizes gameplay in a way that other games don't. And like I don't like Lords of the Fallen. I had to skip like 6 cutscenes in the beginning, and they're like, "And the age of the epic wonders." I was like, who gives a fuck, dude? Let me like swing a big heavy ass sword. And you get in. I had to turn all my graphic settings all the way down because they were like trying to show me the pimple on the underside of the guy's ball sack in 4K, and I was like, who gives a shit about all this, dude? I want it to play good. I don't care about fucking FPS. And this is something that I say to people all the time. I was like, how come if we were to play like a shooter against each other, like Apex, I'm like, how come I would blow you out 10 times out of 10? And I played it on an Xbox with fucking 30 FPS for 5 years. I was like, you're not better than me, so it's not like it makes you better at the game. You're not going pro at the game. You're 30 years old, so who gives a shit, like, the graphical fidelity? You're not getting immersed in it because it's a fucking video game. You're pressing buttons. You're not, like, in a 4K Wonderland. So it's like, you're just who gives a fuck about all that shit? The game, I want the game to play well by not even, like by virtue of the gameplay being really good. I use Control, the game, as a metric for this all time because Control played really well. They made a ton of really awesome choices with the game. I had like game-breaking bugs happen to me. I would like at one point I just like randomly fell through the floor and fell for 100 meters and then I died. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'll just restart. And then nothing happened. And I was like, I guess I'll just restart the game and keep playing because it was just so fun that I didn't care. So like, there's so many games where you'll look over. I mean, look at like every Bethesda game for their entirety of it. People have so much fun playing with them. They just overlook all the horrible, awful bugs that permeate its entire presence. So, like, no one cares about that shit at the end of the day. Look at fucking Mario, dude. It's just not in 4K. He's looked the same as he has since like the GameCube. And it's incredible. Yeah. Who gives a shit? He's getting no graphical updates whatsoever, and it still looks and plays incredible because it's stylized well and it runs well, and they put gameplay first.
Yeah, there's no reason to care about graphics like to that extent, or like FPS. It reminds me of the fucking losers that in the competitive Smash Bros. Community that would be like, oh, this monitor needs to have fucking the correct hertz or whatever. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. But these losers that complain about 60 FPS in single-player games, like, you're not even playing for money. At least those losers are playing for money.
Yeah.
And maybe $5, but they have some skin in the game. And these people are just complaining, like, oh, it needs to be 60 FPS or I'm going to have a fucking stroke. It's like, I hope you do. I hope you do have a fucking stroke.
Like, I'm having a migraine. I was like, dude, you're not built for gaming, okay? It's like, if this video game isn't running 60 FPS, I'm like... It's like watching a movie and you're like, oh, all these colors are making me throw up. It's like, stop watching it, okay? Like, get into different hobbies. Read a fucking book. Go outside. This is not for you, okay? You've entered the wrong pathway. That's always so funny to me. Yeah, this thing that I like doing is like really awful and bad for me. I was like, can you make it? Can you please change it for me? It's like me if I like walked into to Tasty Cake Factory and I was like, you guys gotta stop, okay? I've eaten 200,000 of these and I've gained 65 pounds and I have diabetes, okay? You gotta switch up the formula for me. I want to keep eating them.
McDonald's, you gotta sell salads now. I can't do this anymore.
It's like, okay, like at some point you gotta recognize, like, maybe it's me. Maybe I should segue into something else, like. Yeah, if it's not 120 FPS and 4K, it makes me go blind, okay? I think maybe it's not for you, pal, okay?
Yeah, maybe you care about the wrong thing.
And the problem is, exactly.
60 FPS and they don't care if the game is trash.
Instead of instead of developers focusing on being like, dude, we need to make the next revolution. We need to inspire a game like Dark Souls did. They're like, yeah, this game plays like fucking dog shit. It eats ass. It's horrible. It's completely uninspired. We have put no thought into how the gameplay works and how fun it is to play. 60 FPS. 60 FPS, dude. You'll never believe the refresh rate on this bad boy.
Yeah, it's out of control.
I'm like, they just spit out buzzwords.
Really forgiving if the game is good. If the game is good, like... Look at Celeste. That game looks like dog shit. Yeah. I love it because it plays well.
I know. That's like, the thing. Yeah.
It's like it's an actual good game, so you don't need good graphics to be a good game. But
yeah,
people don't seem to understand that, and some people are too fucking tiny brain to agree.
Yeah, to like capitalize on that. Like the next Call of Duty, they're like, yeah, if you like, you can smell this guy's like chode if you put your controller up to your nose. Like, this is not what we want. Like, they keep trying to, like, revolutionize the wrong stuff. I was like, even, like, if you talk about FPSs, they keep adding stuff. Like, Halo has just got worse in every installment since 4. They're like, yeah, we added Sprint. People are like, we did not want this. And they're like, we've added it in every game since then. And also, you have a dash mechanic now. And also, you have, it's like, no one's asking for this. And you just keep adding it. People are still playing, like, Halo 3. They made a new map for Halo 3. It's like, how do you guys not like... If you're in the gaming world, it's like, if you want to capitalize on an FPS, just make it like Halo 3. Everyone fucking loved it. Like, they're like, they make a new Call of Duty and they're like, yes, remember in Call of Duty you had 2 perks and you would just get guns to unlock? It's like, now you have 15 weapon attachments. You have to get your SMG to level 100 to unlock your fucking LMG unlock. It's like, what is the point of this? I want to shoot my enemies in the fucking head. Can you please help me do that?
That's not enough for some people. They need to have Skinner boxes so they feel like they accomplished something.
Dude, there's also this trend
because they never get to shoot anybody in the head because they can't aim.
There's also this modern thing that I've noticed where games used to be like exploratory for gamers, where like everyone would get on day one and we'd all figure out shit together in your own social circle. And now, I don't know if you've ever heard of that game, The Finals.
No.
There was a game that came out called The Finals, and it was about, like, you had to get a bunch of money, either by killing enemies that, like, turn into money, or you, like, hack a safe, and then you protect it while the money becomes yours, and then you deposit the money, and you win the round by getting money or whatever. But you all have guns, and there's, like, destructible environments, so, like, you can, like, throw a bomb on the floor above you, and it'll, like, shatter, and the guy will come falling down to your level. It's kind of fun. Well, I played it the day it came out. I'm not even joking. I played it for like 5-6 hours with some friends. Like, that was pretty fun. Can't wait to play tomorrow. I went on TikTok on my phone. Like 5 videos in, there's a guy that's like, here's the best way to play this class. And it was like, you do this, this, and this. You use this equipment. You use this equipment. Use these unlocks. And here's a glitch. You can pick up barrels in the game and throw them, but you can't. But your turret is like placed in one room. The character with the turret, it's not fun because the turret has to stay in one stationary place. Well, here, if you put the turret, if you stand up a barrel and put a turret on the barrel that you can pick up, it's allowed to be placed on top of the barrel, and then you can pick up the barrel and run around, and the turret will auto-track people for you. And this is day fucking 1 I see on TikTok. And so already, a big problem I have with Smash that we're talking about is people go online, they look up best combo my character, and they just do a cookie cutter combo on repeat, and it actually like has value because it beats people who don't know that one and who don't know the matchup, and then obviously it loses to everyone who's like still better than them and more talented at the game. But it beats some people who they are less talented than because you just can't know every matchup, and they know like, oh, if I have you between this and this percent, they just fish for a very easy to get, very high value move. And now And it's like they don't actually like learn to play the game. They just want to be at a certain level, and they like look at that. And I sort of hate that that's happened to the gaming industry, because now you'll see it literally like day one. Here's this finals glitch that you need to be using. Here's the best, day one. Here's the best Elden Ring magic loadout that you can get so far. Go to this place. Get this magic. Go here. Make sure your stats are here, here, and here. Now you'll defeat any boss in 2 hits. And it's like, you can't possibly be enjoying playing the game that way, right? You're just following some other guy's guide. You are not a conscious vessel in this experience. You are just replaying what this person is telling you to do word for word. And I was like, this can't be like, right? It's like, do you have fun not discovering the game? Do you have fun just doing that on your own? So for me, it's like very tough, especially with shooters, to like get into a new game that's multiplayer, because I'm like, I'm gonna have fun and explore the game, and I just die to some guy who knows like a really overpowered strategy at the beginning of the game's lifetime.
Yeah, I don't understand how they have fun with that either. It's like the difference between actually like painting a picture yourself and learning how to do it, and just color by numbers.
Yes,
they're just following instructions.
Exactly. It's exactly that. You put it perfectly into words. You're not actually like doing it. You're following their instructions to a T. And I was like, so what part of this is, you're like, yeah, I did it. I did this thing. But like, what part of it is like fun for you? That's what I'm saying. Like, so developers are making games with the wrong things, and people are playing it for the wrong reasons on the other end. They're making 4K 120 FPS games for gamers who are doing cookie cutter, color by numbers builds, and they don't care about anything. Dude, I was playing that new X-Defiant game, and it's extremely poorly optimized, and the maps are bad. I get fucking spawn killed in it already and shit like that. But like, people will, I like legit, this is like the experience that made me stop. I go up against a guy, our team, they say that there's no skill-based matchmaking, so it's just random if you get good or bad people on your team. We go up against a team that had like the top, there's like, it's 8 on 8. The top 3 people on their team had like 50, 40, 40 kills. The highest on our team was like 16. Like it was a complete blowout, right? This guy has 50 kills. He was the player of the game. It showed him at the end of the game, player of the game, this high score or whatever, right? He's on our team the next game, and this is partly me being cursed, which I say all the time. He's on our team the next game. We're losing like a minute in. I look, he has no score. I was like, this motherfucker went AFK. It kicks him out because he went AFK, and it never backfilled us an 8th person. So the guy that goes fucking 50 kills in the game that I play against him, on my team, he goes AFK, gets booted from the game, and we play a man down for the entirety of it. I was like, dude, like, how do they not, like, does no one in the gaming sphere creating these games be like, that's an experience that cannot happen? I just uninstalled, and I was like, I have no desire to play this ever again after that.
There's certain things I just don't understand. Like, you mentioned spawn killing. How is that still a thing?
I don't know.
It's been decades since the first time that's happened to me.
Yeah.
And they haven't figured it out yet. They're just like, oh, that's just part of the game. And it happens in Halo Infinite like every fucking time you spawn.
I still remember you saying it when we would play like Halo 3 together, and you'd be like, spawn dead. Spawn dead. I like have this very vivid memory of you saying that when we were playing it, like in my head from when that happened. It's still fucking happening. Like, dude, just put me in a safer area. If there is a person in close proximity in a game where it takes 2 fucking hits to kill, do not put me in their line of sight. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, it should not be difficult, but developers can't figure this out.
It's so crazy.
They don't even try. I swear they're not trying.
It should be
an issue for that.
And you know what's crazy? It should be priority number 1. You know which game I very rarely got spawn killed in? Splitgate, which is crazy because you have portals that can teleport you across the entire map, and I very rarely got spawn killed in it. I was like, how is this possible? People don't give Splitgate enough credit.
It doesn't even make sense.
I know.
That's true. That's the thing. If you don't get, I hadn't thought of that, because if you don't get spawn killed, you don't think about it.
But
if it hits you, it's the worst thing that's ever fucking happened.
It really does. Exactly, dude. It happened in X-Defiant like 5 games in. I was like, you know what happened? Actually, this is crazy. I say this all the time. It's a term that I remember from, I think it was from Halo originally. When you would die, normally to all of your enemies, it would drop a little marker where your corpse was with an X over it. So a lot of times, I'd say, like to my team, I would just say, one behind on my X. And this way they know, spin around, find my X on their HUD, that's where the enemy is, right? I would say on my X a lot. Something that's ingrained in me from Halo, like multiplayer days. I still use it, and people don't know what it means. I have a very hard time breaking my habit. We'll be in Overwatch, and I'll be like, on my X, and they're like, huh? And I'm like, he's where at? Never mind. It doesn't matter. but like so in XDefiant, I get killed. I'm not even joking, dude. You could see the kill feed, like, or whatever. I spawned, and I saw my own X, and the guy just killed me again.
Jesus fucking
Yeah, I could see the spawn rate is so fast in the game that I spawned instantly on top of my own death marker where a guy had just killed me there from like close range. It's like, why am I being spawned here? I don't like, they're like, oh, well, I have to imagine what they do is, oh, you can spawn in these 5 locations, and if it's filled by enemies, we just put you in the one that has the least amount of enemies or whatever. Just put me in their spawn. Right? They should not be, if they're spawn camping us, they should be losing spawn priority over it, right? Like, I shouldn't be punished. I think it's a stupid thing in the game where they go, like, it is something from, like, Halo where they go, oh, people found out. If we stand here, here, and here, they have to spawn in this back corner, and then we can, like, spawn camp them. They're going to have a really hard time getting out. That's not talented gameplay, okay? That's not skillful for anyone involved. I don't understand why, like, skill and, like, balanced gaming has gone out the fucking window. No one wants to beat people on an equal playing field and prove that they're better than them. They just want to win at any fucking cost. So, like, they should be at a disadvantage. If the entire team is out of their spawns to the point where if I spawn there, I will die, do not spawn me there. It's a fucking very simple thing. Put me in the fucking middle of the map. I don't care. They should be punished for sitting in my spawn, especially if it's an objective game type. I'm playing fucking domination, which is you have to hold, there's 3 points you can hold, and you get 1 second per point. So you have to hold 2 to 1 for the majority of the game. Spawn me on the fucking point. Make them loot. Like, they should not get a benefit to spawn camping me, right? It's a very simple thing. Give me the benefit, and then it will very easily work its way out of the game, because if they start spawn camping us, they'll get kills, but then it will start spawning us on the objective or in their spawn, and we'll have a chance to rally and a chance to get to the thing quicker, right? If you just very easily give us the objective, the people can spawn camp us all day, but we'll just win the game on objective. I'm fine with that. You should not be rewarding people for spawn camping, because it just making, like, bad gaming decisions. It doesn't. They're incentivizing dumbass play, because by virtue of making it better for the people that are playing that way, and not for the people that are getting fucked by it.
Yeah, I remember I was watching someone play Titanfall 2 back when that game was, being played, and they were spawn camping these people. This is supposed to be like a high-level player or whatever, but he was, like, smart about it in a sense, because he was like, oh yeah, we can't go past this particular spot because then the spawns will flip. It's like, people are going to try to find a way to be a piece of shit however they can, and it's the developer's job to not let that happen. So what should happen is if people keep dying seconds after they spawn, you flip the spawns anyway, or you have another system where you can spawn in a third place rather than just being 2 places, one for each team to spawn it. Especially since that wasn't even an objective game mode, so there's no reason not to have more spawn locations than just one on each side of the map.
Exactly.
It's not like you're trying to capture the main point.
You need to, like, I don't think map control should be, like, a thing in the game, because you start each other without map control, right? You start them in the northwest and you start us in the southeast, and then everyone meets in the middle and fucking fights, or takes different pathways to fight each other. So why does that go out the window the second someone gets a kill? Like, oh yeah, he should be rewarded with a kill by pushing into your backline and holding you there forever. We're like, what the fuck is this bullshit? It doesn't happen at the beginning of the game. Why is it happening now? You put us on an even playing field, and then you take it away. Why not, if he's in this location, super far away from his original spawn and his team, put me in the fucking middle? But, like, dude, I think it's so easy to answer it, and they just don't want to do it. They're just like, no, you just get spawn killed. He gets rewarded for that. You lose, sorry. I'm like, yeah, this is really fun and engaging. You don't do it to start the game. It's just a thing that you decide you let happen because you're a lazy piece of shit.
Yeah, this is how games die, because then if you keep getting spawn killed, you're not having a good time. You're not gonna keep fucking playing the game, and then there's less players in the game, and that's snowball effect.
I'll just never play it again.
Yeah, only the players that love spawn camping are still in the game.
Yeah.
So no one's ever gonna fucking start playing it now, because the first match they boot up into, it's gonna be all the spawn camp and bullshit. Dude,
shout outs to my dog Tat in a Hat. He'll play any game with me, dude. I was like on XDefiant the other day. He was like, let me jump in. Dude, his first game was, I think it might have been that game where we played against a guy who had 50 kills. And I was like, I guess if there's no MMR, or there's no back-end matchmaking or whatever they say in unrated, that sometimes it's going to happen. I was like, dude, we literally went up against, like, he was level 1 in like their progression system or whatever. The guy that got 50 kills was like level 93 or something.
Jesus Christ.
I'm like level 12 after playing for like 3 hours. Like, it's not a quick grind. So I'm like, why is a level 1 having to get like, Tat was like, dude, I can't even learn the game. I can't even shoot. Their spawn camping is so bad that like 2 people would be at our spawn, like on the right side, 2 would be on the left, and we just have to fight, like win a 2-on-1 spawning to win. But it's 8-on-8, so they just have 2 people replace them instantly.
Jesus.
Like, we were just getting fucking held in spawn for the entirety of the game. It was like a 3-minute game. It was a fucking nightmare. I was like, this should not be the game that you want to happen. You're rewarding these fucking idiot scumbags by letting them drop a 50 bomb on your head by spawn camping you. And a guy whose first game ever has to go up against that, he quit playing it that night. He's like, yeah, dude, I tried. We played like 5 games. He actually like quit before I did. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to play this game. And I was like, I completely get it. It makes no sense. It has bad spawning utility. And, like, there's also, like, a thing that I hate about gaming FPSs these days where, like, there's weird movement tech that I hate where, like, there's a thing. I think that they're patching it out currently, but there's a thing where, like, people on PC just bind jump to, like, the scroll wheel and they just spam it when they're in a fight, and it doesn't slow down like your momentum at all. So they just like are jumping non-stop in a fight. They're super mobile and hard to track, and there's no cooldown. Like in Fortnite, if you jump like 4 times in a row, like your jumps get like less high. You can't just like do that. You can't just like jump non-stop.
Yeah,
but in this you just like they just jump around like fucking maniacs. They look they're like slide jumping non-stop. It's super hard to track, and there's like abusing stupid game mechanics that are implemented and programmed poorly. And they're like patching it out, but it's like, I don't care. I hate like when this is another thing that like as games as a service, they also just like, yeah, we can just constantly do patches. It's like, I want a fucking finished game. If I get on it, I have a bad experience day 1, I'm just never loading this bullshit game up again.
Yeah, I'm not going to wait for you to fix it. It's like, everyone wants to be No Man's Sky so bad because allegedly it's good now. I'm never going to find out because it was shit on day 1. So as far as I'm concerned, it's just shit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give it another chance. Like, you had years to develop this game, and you didn't.
Yeah.
So
why exactly? Why would I play a game that shit on day? Oh, it'll probably get better. Give them time. No, not give them time. It's like somebody like I fucking order a hoagie at a restaurant. I order a fucking meatball sub and it comes out without marinara sauce, and then I'm like, hey, I didn't get this, and they like come spoon it onto my fucking thing at my table. I'd be like, I'm gonna give you a fucking bad review. I wanted it the right way. Why am I gonna like come on, man, give them a shot. They forgot to put it on. It's a classic restaurant mistake. Let them fix it for you. No, make it right.
My steak from medium rare to medium well.
Make it right the fucking first time. It's not hard. Again, I say this as a consumer. No one asked them. No one was like, we didn't fucking petition Ubisoft to make XDefiant. They're like, here we are with our COD killer. If it's dog shit, I hope it dies, and I hope everyone who worked on it blows up in a fiery explosion.
Dude, that's a big problem I have with these Call of Duty players, that like the reason XDefiant has any traction at all is because it advertises we don't have skill-based matchmaking.
Yes.
And that's because there are some complete losers that play Call of Duty that got mad when they added skill-based matchmaking.
Yeah.
It's like, why you don't want a fair fight? You just want to stomp nerds?
They do. Sorry.
They absolutely do. I spoke to someone at work, and they were talking about Call of Duty. It's like the only game this guy plays. And so whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh, you're not a gamer. Like, you don't play games. You only play Call of Duty, so you're just not good at video games. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him like, I'm like, I hope you're not one of those nerds that hate skill-based matchmaking. You fucking losers like that. I can't stand them. And he's like, oh, I actually am. He's like, I wish they would keep skill-based matchmaking out of the game. And I'm like, why? Like, why do you just want to stomp like 12-year-old kids that just picked up the game for the first time? And he's like, yeah, I enjoy that. And then not 10 seconds later, he was complaining about how when there is skill-based matchmaking, sometimes he gets stomped. And I'm like, you just said you wanted to stomp kids, and then you complain when you get stomped. That's two sides of the same coin. Like,
yes.
You're complaining about the same thing that you want to
do.
Are
doing to people, like, exactly.
I was at work, and I'm just like, you're a fucking loser. You suck at games.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, you're trash.
It's so
like,
stupid.
Anyone that's against skill-based matchmaking, you're also against being good at the game.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
They just want to get rewarded for buying it. So
these people this guy that played against me, it's like they just rewarded them. Like that's what he wanted to do. It's like he literally played against a level 1. He was level 90. I was like, you should feel shame for that. That would be like fucking LeBron James showing up to the Jewish Community Center and playing against a fucking 12-year-old basketball team, and then being like, dude, that ruled. I fucking beat the shit out of those kids. It's like, no,
you saw that little girl, dude.
Yeah, it's like, dude, yes, everyone knows. Like, a level 90 next Defiant who has a ton of experience in every unlock on every weapon is going to beat a level 1 who has never played the game before. There needs to be something to stop that from happening if you want to retain a player base. Why is it happening in the first place? Again, I think that these people that are like these like weapon grinders and shit like that, the games will never do this because it has a fucking battle pass and they're making money from them. But they have to punish those people. Unfortunately, if you put 100 hours into the game in the first week and you're in the top tier of like all players played, you have to have a longer queue time to get into games because otherwise you just get into games with level 5 people and you shit on their heads. You're obviously very clearly more talented than them, so you have to play against more talented people at the expense of you. You should not be at the expense of a guy who just picks up this game once in his life and wants to fucking try it.
Yeah. And I remember when we were playing competitive Smash Brothers, I know for a fact you feel the same way as me about this. If I played against someone that was a complete scrub, it was not a good time for me either.
No.
Because I'm not a piece of shit. I didn't like stomping kids. The only time I enjoyed it is afterward if they didn't shake my hand. There was a couple times this happened at like national tournaments where I would beat some kid and he would like punch himself in the leg and not shake my hand. I was like, all right, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
But if I was playing at my house tournament, I had to play against someone that I was a lot better than. I didn't have a good time. They didn't have a good time. This is just bad all around, but this is how tournaments are sometimes.
Yeah.
We're not playing a fucking paid tournament. We're trying to play with matchmaking online. That shouldn't happen.
Yes. That's the thing. Like, even at a paid tournament, like, people try and do, like, seeding, and they're just fucking horrible dog shit at it. But the intent of seeding is not, for me, I don't think it should be to give the supposed number 1 player the easiest path to victory. It should be to make the most balanced matchups across the entire thing, which, like, in theory it's supposed to, but like, what's the fucking point of making the best player there play the worst player there? We know he's gonna win, and then the worst player there has to play the best player every fucking time and get his shit pushed in. He's not learning anything. He's gonna stop fucking coming to tournaments. So it's like,
that's just what happens every single time.
And they don't care really, because the guy who's best is like, I don't care. I just want to win the tournament and get my $40 or whatever. And it's like, they're all fucking scumbags and they don't care. It's win at any cost, not prove that you're better than an equally or higher skilled opponent by outplaying them, which I think to me has far much more merit than anything. It's the actual only thing that I want to do in competitive games is beat someone who is equally my skill level or more talented than me. Because if they're less talented than me, then what's the fucking point of playing against them?
Yeah, it's a complete waste of time.
Of course it's gonna be sweaty. That's like my I love when people do that. Oh man, this game is so sweaty. I was like, yeah, it's a fucking competitive game by nature. Why are you playing a competitive game like to chill out? Go play fucking Farmville, dude. Like, yeah, it's so stupid.
Sims.
Exactly. If you want to chill out, go play Sims. If you're playing a competitive game, you know, you're playing Apex where it's like, yes, only one. Dude, this happened and we were playing Overwatch the other day and we killed their Ana and she gets in all chat and was like, wow, you're really gonna bum rush me in that room? And we're like, I said, you're the enemy. Like, this happens a lot. People are like, oh wow, Solo ulted me, very cool. And I'm like, what do you mean? Are you fucking stupid? Like, you're imposing these like rules on yourself. Like, I can't believe that guy would kill me. It's like fucking psychotic, dude. These are the type of people. The more you guys make free games with battle passes, the more you're inviting these fucking dumb troglodytes into your game that think that like there's this. Oh, you should have fight me fairly. I'm a healer. Kill the rest of my team first, and then kill me. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You have this weird like chip on your shoulder, and you're just bad at games.
Yeah. The only game that's ever had honor, and we'll take it all the way back to the beginning, is Dark Souls and PvP.
Oh my god, you're right.
For some reason, everyone would fucking bow at the beginning of the fight.
And that was
there were like crazy ganks and shit in that too.
And that was like completely community run, and there's like this weird thing of like, you don't use potions, everyone bows, and you have a good day. Well, there's obviously people that were shitbags, but you know, it's like that game wasn't like the highly competitive PvP shooters that these other games are by nature. That was just like a fun little additive thing where you could kill somebody else. There's not really like a downside to it. It didn't really ruin your experience in any way.
Yeah.
You died a million times in Dark Souls. Dying to some other schmuck is the same thing as dying to the fucking Taurus demon, so who cares, right?
Yeah,
it's like
who gives a shit?
Exactly. So it's like fun, additive. In a competitive game where dying once starts you back to the fucking screen, it's like it's there's so many other factors involved. But we got off on a tangent. Let's call it on this bitch. What do you got to say at the end of the day?
Nothing really.
Hell yeah, dude.
Shoutouts to Dark Souls.
Shouts to Dark Souls. We
Probably
need a
the best game of all
revolution.
time.
We need a revolution.
Yeah,
All right, that's
absolutely.
us. We're out. Bye.